Joining us now, Curtis Ellis. Curtis Ellis was on the Trump transition team. He was on the Trump campaign. He was in the Department of Labor. He is now a senior advisor at America First Policies. And he's with us now. And there's a lot going on, and I can't wait to get him on. Hey, Curtis, great to have you.
Hey, it's great to be here, John. Great to be here.
I love your column. I loved your column.
The stuff about the polls, you just could not be more right. You could not be. You couldn't say it any clearer. The truth could not be more apparent. These polls are. You can't believe them. You can't believe the polls. These are the same people that said 99.99% chance that Hillary Clinton is going to win. It's all over, folks. Just stay home, forget it, go have another beer. Don't do anything. I always expected, I was so naive, and I expected after that debacle for the pollsters in 2016 that we would see a string of articles about the polls from the pollsters explaining, well, we're trying to figure out what went wrong, how did we have it so wrong. You would have investigative reporters writing articles, academic articles coming out in the Journal of American Statistics, polling and research, academic journals, professional journals, talking about how we've recalibrated our polls, how we should try it this way, no, we should try it that way. After 2008 and Barack Obama makes his historic victory, there was a huge book written by Sacha Baron Cohen. I think it was Isaacson. Anyway, it was called. I forget the name of the book. I'll look it up in a minute. I read the book. I can't remember the title of it. But a whole big, multi-100-page book about the incredible data operation of the Obama campaign. Right? They went out there and they were using Facebook, and they were using digital technology, and they had, all kinds of cool bells and whistles that they were able to target voters right down to the individual level. Of course, when Donald J. Trump did this, it became a huge scandal. Oh, my God, they've ripped off all our private information. But when Obama did it, it was this huge, great leap forward that would assure the Democrats electoral superiority forever, for the rest of the end of history. I expected a similar book and a similar investigation after the polling fiasco, where all the polls got it so wrong. Mm-hmm. It's like, well, why don't you... not a word, not a peep. These pollsters, they got it wrong in 2016. You've never seen a single word from them explaining how they got it wrong. Mm-hmm. If they haven't explained how they got it wrong, how could they fix it? Mm-hmm. Answer, they didn't. Mm-hmm. They haven't. Mm-hmm. Would you, if you went into the supermarket and you bought a brand of ground hamburger meat and took it home and found there was a rat in it, would you go back and buy more hamburger meat from that same store?
No.
I don't think so.
Well, but you're going on the presumption that these polling companies and the pollsters are trying to do a legitimate poll and their methodology was wrong. That's your premise of this conversation. That's what we believed basically in 2016 in December. I've changed my position now because
now we know better.
You learn too much. They know the methodology is wrong. They do it wrong on purpose so they can drive a narrative. I mean, look, I saw it in Virginia with the Christopher Newport University poll that came out a month before the Virginia election saying that Trump was at 35% and was getting beat by 18 by Clinton. There's no way we're going to lose by 18. But the poll was done in a way to dispirit Trump supporters and voters in Virginia. So it was a produced, contrived push poll narrative. They did it with false methodology in order to dispirit my entire Trump team of volunteers in Virginia. You can't get people to knock on doors on a Sunday and a Saturday when they got other things to do when Christopher Newport University is putting a poll out saying that we're down by 23.
It's exactly right.
That's what they do, Curtis.
They know what they're doing. They're doing it wrong. These are junk polls, polling with a purpose. The purpose is to dispirit us, dispirit our side, and suppress the vote. Suppress the enthusiasm, suppress the vote, suppress turnout. And that's exactly what they're doing. That's why they didn't write those articles. They didn't write those articles saying, well, we found the incorrect methodology. Well, they found the incorrect methodology the day before they conducted the polls. They knew exactly what they're doing. Same way Google knows to suppress search results, make it harder to find information about the pro-Trump candidates. Google has become useless. I do searches on Google. I get the same story for 3, 4, 5, 6 pages. It used to be you would get a whole bunch of different stories on a given topic or a given subject. You'd get a whole bunch of different search results. Now you get the same darn thing, and it's all from the Washington Post. And then every newspaper that repeats the Washington Post press service gives you the same story. It's just ridiculous.
It's fake news, and it's now fake polls. And the fake polls work in conjunction of the fake polls put out a fake poll to drive a propaganda narrative, and then the fake news picks it up and then propagates the fake polls with the fake news. And all in a coordinated effort to drive down enthusiasm and tell Trump voters, hey, look, you're really too stupid to have a job anyway, so stay home and have a beer. I mean, that's the purpose of these, Curtis. I talked to John McLaughlin, and this all came clear to me, maybe it was 3 days ago. I talked to John McLaughlin Sunday night, right? You and I go back with John. I know I go back with him 35 years. I went to college with him in New Jersey. I go back with a guy 35 years. I said, John, I got your poll. You're saying that the generic spread between Republicans and Democrats right now is 4%. CNN polls got it at 13%. I mean, that's a 300% difference, right? That doesn't make any sense to me. Tell me, what is the difference between your poll and their? Just explain it to me, John. I called him at home Sunday night. Layman's terms. Explain it. He said it's very simple. I do polling methodology based on likely voter turnout model, based on 2016, based on region, right? It's not weighted in Los Angeles. It's an authentic poll to get information. Their poll is done in such a way they call all voters, anybody that answers the phone, doesn't matter, weighted, not weighted. And if you do your poll that way, it's always going to skew Democratic big. And he said, so their poll is basically an agenda narrative, and mine is authentic. He said, we're down by 4 or 5. And he walked me through the crosstabs. So I believe the House right now is a toss-up. And the Democratic operatives that I talked to a week ago told me that the Republicans were going to win 203. The Democrats were going to win 202. There were 30 seats up for grabs. And without attribution, he said, we need to win 16 seats and Pelosi will be speaker out of those 30. Now, that makes sense to me. And I said to him, what are the odds on it? And he said 50-50. So how do you go from 50-50 to CNN saying the Democrats are going to win 60 seats? How do you do that?
Well, what they're doing is lying to the people. Again, this is another. I always say that President Trump has exposed all the mendacity, all the lies, all the falsehoods that have existed in the American political system from the moment he came down that elevator in Trump Tower. And one of the biggest lies is that the media is objective and not biased. It is obvious they're biased. It's obvious they have an agenda, and it's a liberal, it's actually a far left agenda, and it's becoming more clear every day. You can't dispute it.
We're with Curtis Ellis, Senior Policy Advisor for America First Policies. You can get more information. Go to americafirstpolicies.org. Curtis, you wrote a great column yesterday. I've got to send it out, talking about the left-wing mobs and how you think they're going to be affecting not only this election coming up, but the future. Can you elaborate on that?
Yeah, we saw with the Kavanaugh battle these left-wing mobs, the screaming mobs, who were swarming senators, and they're doing all this crazy stuff, clawing at the door of the Supreme Court and threatening people with violence and whatnot. But that's radical left stuff. That's not your grandparents' Democratic Party. And the fact of the matter is that everything we hear from the Democrats, the identity politics, the open borders, the globalism, that there are no borders, there is no country. We're all worried about the global economy, and somebody in Bangalore is just as important as somebody in Baltimore. This is straight out of the radical left playbook from the 1960s. I go into detail about how the Democratic Party's dogma was written by the most radical faction of the radical left in the 1960s and 70s, the Weathermen. Weathermen were the mad bombers, the crazy student revolutionaries who went underground. They went into hiding, and they started bombing government buildings and police stations, robbing banks, and all kinds of nonsense like that, because they thought they were going to spark the revolution, an armed struggle, a violent uprising to overthrow capitalism. That didn't happen, obviously. We're still here. But they did score a huge victory in that the Democratic Party has now adopted their thinking. In 1974, the Weathermen issued a manifesto called Prairie Fire, the idiot's guide to revolutionary anti-imperialism politics in America. And they didn't say the idiot's guide; I said that. The Prairie Fire, they lay out how to think about the American scene so that we can have revolution. And they say, forget about the white working class. That's like classical Karl Marx says, the white will overthrow capitalism and they will lead the revolution. And they said, forget it. The white working class in this country, the Weathermen said, forget it. The white working class in this country, they're getting paid. They're making a living. They're happy. They're not going to overthrow anything. We got to find ourselves a new working class. The new working class are blacks, Hispanics, third world people, women, and students. So we've got to talk to them, and we got to get them. That's who's going to lead the revolution. Focus on dividing people by race. Focus on dividing people on the basis of their race and gender. Right? The women are oppressed, and they are oppressed because of the capitalist patriarchal system, and the blacks and the Hispanics, the third world people, as they call them, the third world people in America are the ones who are going to lead the working class, lead this new class towards revolution. Mm-hmm. This is identity politics. It's mm-hmm. written in this very stilted, turgid, Marxist language that mm-hmm. the Weathermen use, but mm-hmm. they're saying the same thing. Mm-hmm. Say, don't talk about, forget about the white working class, forget about working people, forget about that. Talk about race, talk about gender. Talk about race, talk about gender. And that's what the Democratic Party is doing, and that's what the Hollywood celebrities are doing. And they say, this is how you're going to raise people's consciousness, make them woke, right? You're going to become woke when you realize that it's all about race and gender. And in addition, they also said, we are fighting on a worldwide scale. Is what the Weathermen believed, that they were fighting alongside the Viet Cong and, the revolutionary movements in Africa. But basically they said the struggle is in anti-imperialism, and there are no borders in this struggle. So there are no borders. It's all over the world. We're all fighting the same thing. We're fighting against capitalism. We're fighting for social justice on a worldwide scale. This is globalism. This is the Democratic Party's outlook, that it doesn't matter whether you're in Bangalore or Baltimore, the fight is the same. And this is what Linda Sarsour says when she's leading the Women's March against Trump on the day after the inauguration. She's saying, our sisterhood. We're the same struggle as the Palestinian refugees. We're in the same struggle as the anti-racist activists in Africa. It's all the same nonsense. This is called intersectionality. That's what the left preaches. You got this idiot like David Hogg, and he's now the new student activist. Students demand action on gun control. But he says, it's all the same struggle. It's all the same struggle, whether it's refugees or women or, black people. And even though we are white, well-off middle-class students in Parkland high school that have our gun problem, it's the same struggle as the poor black people in downtown St. Louis. Intersectionality. Again, another doctrine lifted right from the Weatherman Communist Manifesto, Prairie Fire in 1974. It's all there, clear as day. I lay it out. My article is in American Greatness, amgreatness.com. That's the website, American Greatness, amgreatness.com. You can read all about it there.
I tell you what, Curtis, I really think you're onto something with this Weathermen and these angry mobs, and I don't think that Middle America likes this. The good fortune of us being a little long in the tooth, I speak for myself, I guess, is that I remember 68. I remember Vietnam. I grew up in that era. I remember my father was a union organizer. I remember that violence that went on there when they tried to shut the union out of the daily. I remember the riots in Newark, New Jersey, because we lived in Jersey City and Bayonne, not that far. I remember the riots in Asbury Park when we went to the beach. I remember all this stuff.
Yeah, me too.
And you remember it also. And
what happened in '68 is the crazies took over the Democratic Party. The Democratic Party used to be run by union guys.
Right.
And but what happened is in '68, you saw the union guys, the construction unions, went and beat up the anti-war demonstrators in the streets of Manhattan. And that's when the Weathermen said, forget about the white working class. These people are against us. We got to find ourselves a new revolutionary class. And then when they took over the Democratic Party, they pushed all the union people out of all of the offices, all of the high positions of power in the union, and replaced them with blacks and women and Hispanics and this group, that group, all the identity politics group, because they decided students would lead the Democratic Party and lead the progressive movement, and you ended up with a bunch of college-educated leftists who never worked a day in their life and never had a callus on their hands, but they had the revolutionary and the doctrinaire attitude. They had the right doctrine of globalism, and we're gonna manipulate the poor black people and the oppressed women to lead the revolution for us.
Well, you might be right. But I tell you, these mobs, these angry mobs running around, chasing people out of restaurants, out of subways, harassing families, sending beheaded tweets to senators' wives, this is not a good thing. And I don't think it's a way to win elections. And I think the Democrats are going to pay a heavy price for this, Curtis, come November. I'm out of time. I want to thank Curtis Ellis for being with us. America First Policies.